So I'm pressing record now. And I'm seeing people renaming their rooms, and facilitators also go ahead and rename yourselves. I think I know where you need to go, but it will be easiest when I'm putting you in the rooms to have the numbers there. Okay. We're going to be doing some polling with Mentimeter. And so I don't know if you've had a chance to try this before, but if you hold your smartphone up to that little QR code and open your camera, it should take you right to the page. And so we're going to go ahead and do kind of an icebreaker poll right now. So if you go out and go to Mentimeter, like by holding up your camera to the QR code, or you can do it through that link at the top of the slide as well, but that's not as easy for you to click. So I would recommend the smartphone. Oops, let's see. And is it working? Can't tell. Mine didn't open it.
I just put the link in the chat. You might be able to
great.
get it better that way.
Okay. Did it not work with the QR?
It worked for me. So.
Yeah,
okay.
it wasn't picking up for me either.
Okay. So there is a question. There should be you should see a question. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to jump out of the slides and go to my Mentimeter.
Can you have Grim set up my coffee machine?
So this is just a quick icebreaker. Oh yes, I see them coming in. Let me share this. That's not what I want to do. I want to present what we're seeing. So I'm seeing the word cloud come in for summer fun. That's fantastic. I am looking forward to many of these things also. Non-scholarly reading, yes. Reading for pleasure. You can tell this is a group of faculty. Return of live music. Hey, me too. I'm excited about that. Gardening, yeah. Great. I am happy to see that this is working. So we're gonna, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of the Mentimeter and back to the presentation. Oops. Here it is, PowerPoint slideshow. Look at that. Okay. So thank you for doing the poll, and we will have a little bit more polling coming up later. Our agenda for today will, during this plenary session, which is going to go till about 10:30, we're going to just do a quick overview of the Academy, talking about what we're going to do here, what we're not going to do here, a little bit of data, and a little bit of a discussion of the data that I have asked you guys to consider as you were preparing for the Academy, and just a quick overview of backward design, which is really going to be very important in the conversations in the breakout rooms. You'll hear lots more about it. This is just will be really a high level review. We have our keynote from Erin Weiss from Lorain County Community College, as I said. And then we'll head into our first breakout sessions. And I wanted to just take a moment to call out that we have a fantastic group of facilitators for you. And many of them are from Michigan, who are already teaching co-rec classes. And we did bring in a couple of folks to pinch hit from Ohio and from Montana. And so you will meet them in the college algebra breakout session. But I just want to really express my deep appreciation for all of these people who have put time into planning these sessions and discussions for you, and have mostly done it, as out of a desire to help their colleagues. So I really appreciate their time and effort and the work that they're going to do with you guys today. So appreciate that. We will have a fairly substantial lunch break from 12 to 1:30. And then we will have a group discussion about life in a co-rec classroom. And then we will have another breakout session to continue the conversations. These are meant to be really intense kind of work sessions. Roll up your sleeves, get your questions answered, start putting your syllabus together kind of sessions. And Katie, you'll highlight if there's anything in the chat.
Will do.
Yep. All
Someone
right.
was asking about the Mentimeter. So if you're interested in learning more about Mentimeter, I did drop a link in the chat.
Yeah.
There is limited free functionality through it, and we have a pretty nominal paid account, but it's been awesome for us.
Yeah, it's surprisingly easy to use compared to other things like Poll Everywhere, which never works for me. I bet 0 for whatever it is, 0 for 0 with Poll Everywhere every time I've tried to use it. So hopefully better with Mentimeter. Already better with Mentimeter, honestly. Okay, so the goals of the Reconnect Academy. We're gonna, as I mentioned, we're gonna engage in discussion, Q&A, and work sessions with the facilitators over the 2 days. A little bit of group discussion, but mostly the work sessions with facilitators are the meat and potatoes of the Academy. We're gonna talk about best practices to design effective learning experiences in the target co-requisite course pairings that you are planning to work on. We're gonna make, and through these conversations with facilitators, hopefully you'll be helped to make some decisions about course logistics and to prepare for implementation, whether you're planning to implement this fall or in the coming up, in winter 2022. But what we're hoping is that these sessions will help you feel more prepared for when you're ready to implement your co-requisite classes. I'm going to just, address an elephant in the room up front. There are this is the language from the Reconnect program guide for community colleges. It mentions that there are choices. The co-requisite, the compression model, or the modularization model are listed as the acceptable models. The focus is on the acceleration of developmental education. So I want to acknowledge that, yes, the Act does offer us some choices. We have chosen to focus on the co-requisite at the Center for Student Success. We're feeling pretty confident based on the research that some of which I've made available in the Canvas module, and more that is coming out at a fairly brisk clip. The evidence says that the co-requisite delivery, if you adopt a co-requisite delivery at scale, you're gonna accelerate completion of gateway courses for all students. You're likely to close equity gaps, and you're gonna be in compliance with the Reconnect legislation. So that is kind of the reason that we are zeroing in on co-rec. We have confidence that if institutions adopt this model, they will successfully meet the goals of the Reconnect Act, and that will be, many people, of course, that was a key question as this legislation began to come online, is what will comply with this. And as we have kind of gone through the months since starting to dig into this, I would say that my confidence has grown that this is the way to go. And I'm going to ask Allison if she wants to add anything here about the evidence for co-rec.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I don't think there's anything to add that probably most of you aren't familiar with at this point, but there is mounting evidence from around the country, including the first longitudinal studies from places like CUNY and elsewhere, showing that COREC, is effective and that the gains hold through for students, both in higher levels of math and to graduation. And, now that there is sort of mounting evidence from around the country, there's also more knowledge about things like all students tend to do better in higher level math who have COREC. Some of the things that we didn't know before about the sort of the depth and range of benefits of COREC for students. And so the evidence base is very, very strong and growing, but which is not to say that everything is known, right? And so there's a lot more experimentation that needs to happen, but it does seem that the COREC structure is the most promising.
Thanks, Allison.
On that note, there's a question in the chat about whether there have been any comparative studies between different models. Can either of you speak to that or take a look at Sarah's question?
I'm not aware of any studies that, there are studies between the traditional model, the prerequisite model, and the co-requisite model, and that there's a lot of that's traditionally what has been studied. One of the reasons that we have kind of moved away at the Center for Student Success from those other models, for example, the modularization model, other states had tried that and have actually discontinued it. In Virginia and North Carolina, they had tried modularizing, or particularly Virginia. I can't remember, North Carolina was talking about it. The compression model also, I'm not aware of any institutions who have adopted it at scale. I think, originally when the conversation started about acceleration of developmental education, these were sort of the lanes that people were trying. And so that's how they ended up in the legislation, but I'm not aware of any studies that compare different ways to accelerate.
There's another question about test design, and I don't know if you want to go into all of this now or if there's going to be another opportunity for this discussion, but go ahead and take a look at Nathan's question.
Wait, Nathan's question. I'm not sure, Nathan, what test you're talking about.
How did you design your study? Was there a control group? What was the data collected? How did you collect the data? So on and so forth.
Sure. We didn't do our own study at the Center for Student Success. We are reviewing lots of different national research studies. One of them, one of the ones I put in the Canvas site was the work that Tristan Denley had done with the University of Georgia system. Which
the CUNY study is also a randomized control trial. So,
yeah.
So the Georgia research is more like so large numbers of students, unit record analysis of large populations of students. But the CUNY research is the first sort of gold standard RCT study and the first longitudinal. I think that's probably in the folder as well.
Mm-hmm,
Excellent,
it is.
thank you.
So kind of riffing off of this, what we're going to do here, we're going to work on the syllabus for co-requisites. We're going to hear from and ask questions of faculty who are experienced in teaching co-requisites. And we're going to learn about upcoming opportunities, and you're going to help me identify your needs for further support from the Center for Student Success. So this is, the information flows in both directions from this conversation. And this is, although this is sort of the culmination of the work on Canvas that we've been doing, this will not be the end of the Reconnect Academy. We're going to continue to keep the Canvas site live and keep the conversation going after these sessions are over. Just a couple of things. Erica, Katie, and I had the privilege of going to a session for compression planning last month, or I guess was the end of April. And one of the things that really stuck with me from this was that, you outline when you start a meeting, you can outline the purposes of the meeting, but you can also outline what you're not going to do at the meeting. And so I'm just going to quickly say a few things that we can't do here. We're not going to, I already talked about how we've focused on co-requisite instruction. That's not to say that there is, like Allison says, it's not to say that everything is known and everything is, that the research is over, but evidence is looking good for this right now. And so we're going to just go ahead and sort of go with it and assume that you are coming along for the ride, whether you're in the sidecar or the front seat or the driver's seat. We're not going to talk about other options to comply with the Michigan Reconnect legislation. I can't really address that. I was hoping that would become clearer over the months that we have been working on, but it has not really become clearer. And so I have kind of gotten to the point, and I think, all of us at the center, that the adopting the co-rec model is going to be the surest way to be sure that you are complying with the Reconnect legislation. The other thing is that we know that a lot of the questions that are swirling around this have to do with what to do about placement. And those are very important issues, and the involvement of advisors and other staff are very important there, but we're not going to discuss those in detail in these sessions. That's why we're focusing on the course design, because, and this is Allison.
Because I like it. I feel like I should have inserted a drum roll here. So part of the Reconnect legislation required the creation of a work group, diverse work group of institutional practitioners, public officials, folks from LEO, folks from the governor's office, community-based organizations, and others. And some folks who are actually on the work group are also in this meeting today. So thank you for being here, Janice and Sean, and maybe others. I don't know if I can see everybody. But that work group has just concluded as of yesterday its last synchronous meeting, and there are draft recommendations being produced now that will be delivered to LEO at the end of the month, the Department of Labor. So that will be happening late June. Those are due June 30th. What we can say right now, oh, and I should say that I'm SOVA is facilitating the work group. And so we have, over the course of the meetings, we have curated national researchers and experts to present. We have tracked down data and information based on questions raised by members in the group. We have led conversations and created the conditions for people to essentially study and better understand what is known and what is not known about placement, effective and equitable approaches to placement. And so there are recommendations coming out right now. The broad outline, sort of the headlines of those recommendations, are that high school GPA should be the primary determinant for placement. There is a recommendation around robust use of guided self-placement processes, and a sub-recommendation on sort of support to institutions in creating robust guided self-placement processes that can be implemented effectively. There is an emphasis on greatly reduced reliance on traditional tests and mandatory placement, that sort of traditional paradigm. It has, I think we can see more or less definitively now that there are no circumstances under which it's appropriate to use a high stakes placement test to place students as a single measure, to place students into, or to determine needs for remediation. And so there is greatly reduced reliance on traditional test scores. And then there is really big focus on the need for colleges to receive the support that is necessary to, in fact, implement, correct, and revise placement processes. There is, following, again, national evidence and practice from many states, the general recommendations are for folks, and I've actually seen people like Sean Newmiller nodding vigorously when this comes up in conversation, that co-rec isn't the kind of thing that you pilot on the side and then scale over time. It's something you scale and then refine over time, that it has its best shot of being effective for students if you're going for scale out of the gate. And so we want to make sure that institutions have the support that they need, not only the financial support that they need, but also the conditions for professional learning and the space that they need to do this work and refine it over time well. So there's a strong focus on support for colleges to implement these changes effectively, COREC and revised placement processes. There is going to be a sort of preview on June 25th. At 10 a.m. we'll walk through the recommendations. They're in the final phase of, or final round of revisions based on feedback from the working group provided yesterday. And so that will be happening on the 25th, and then those recommendations will be delivered to the Department of Labor on the 30th. Is there anything I'm missing, Jenny?
No, that was great, Allison. Thank you. I'll pause a moment to see if there are any questions, but I'm not seeing anything coming in. Great. All right. So I want to move to a little bit of data, a little bit of a data discussion. One of the things I think is so important about this legislation and the way that the need to reform our developmental education is going to impact our state is that I believe that this is the foundation for increasing equitable outcomes for students. I think and you're going to see in the data that our students of color, that our older students, that just exactly the students that we need to complete our degrees and enter into those well-paying jobs are exactly the students who are seemingly getting caught in this net where they never get through their early gateway classes. So I feel like this is, this is the foundational work for any of the student success initiatives that we work on, whether we're strengthening workforce programs, whether we're trying to promote transfer. If we don't kind of fix this at the beginning, we're not going to fix that equity pipeline to those higher outcomes. So this is a really important aspect to me. And so I want to take a moment, first of all, because everybody had hopefully an opportunity to either complete or to review their sequence analysis tables on the course that they're planning to redesign. Since you completed it, that you had a chance to look at what percentage of your students start at the gateway course, what percentage start one level below. And I did, I know that this is can be kind of a data intensive exercise. So I tried to make it easy by saying that you could estimate by the number of sections that you offer at each level what percentage of students. So it could be what percentage of sections. And people had a chance to kind of add up those credit and contact hours to see how long it could take a student potentially to move through that sequence. I do have another Mentimeter question. So I'm going to go to question 2. Let's see if I need to do that. Let's go back. All right, so hopefully people are seeing the second question when they go back to the Menti. Are they?
I put the link in the chat again, and if you have the browser window still up and refresh it, it should move to the next question. Jenny, it's not doing that. It says the presenter needs to advance.
Okay, I thought I just did. Okay, got it. Oh, I see. Okay.
Perfect.
Now you should be able to see. Here they come. That's interesting that 90% enter into college courses first term. Yeah, a lot of people did those weighted averages. So so you were able to find out that, that a lot of your students didn't have to complete as many courses. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Jenny, did you want to share the results on your screen?
That would be really a good idea, wouldn't it, Katie? I'm looking at them. How come you're not? All right, come here, Zoom. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. Yep, here we go.
It was kind of high suspense though. It was working. It was working to get me really excited to see them.
So this is an interesting one that says here the high percentage of our students are making it through their math gateway class in 2 or fewer semesters. And I think, one of the things I want to point out about the sequence analysis table that I will show you in the next bit of data that we're going to look at is that just because they can doesn't mean they do. So that's something to follow up on, is if your students are able to complete their sequence in 1 year or 2 semesters by entering into one level below and then taking the gateway class in the following semester, it would be great to follow up and see how many of them actually do that. That's kind of an important number. Lots of people are observing that they think that a larger than I thought number of students are beginning at college level writing. Great, thank you. And we will be saving these to share kind of a summary when we put this slideshow on Canvas for you. Does anybody want to unmute and say something about their remark? Thank you for sharing all of this. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slides. So having looked at the sequences, as I mentioned, the next step is then to say, okay, so how is it going for students completing those sequences? So are they able to, so the sequence analysis table says they're able to, do they actually complete their gateway courses in 1 year? And we focus on this 1 year outcome because the Community College Research Center did some research, which I did share in the Canvas portal regarding these early momentum metrics. And these are really, these have been positively associated with later, bigger completion metrics like completion of their degree or successful transfer or completion of, larger numbers of college level credits, gaining entry into programs, things like that, that we want for our students. And so the idea is the faster that students can get through these gateway level classes, the more likely it is that they're going to successfully complete what they came to us to do. So this is some data. This is from 24 of our colleges, students from 24 of our colleges who started in fall of 2017. This is data from AACC's Voluntary Framework for Accountability. I can give you more information about these the numbers in this cohort, but you can see that in 2017, we had a total, these are the total new student cohort of 38,000 students. And you can see that of all of them, about 22% passed college level math, and about 43.5% passed college level English within 1 year, and a pretty dramatically lower percentage passed both of them within 1 year. But as you kind of scroll down through the size, the largest group, of course, is white students. They track the all students. Even they do a little better than the all students. But once you get down here to the Black and Hispanic students, the percentages drop dramatically. And those students are not completing their math. Certainly they're not completing their math. Fewer of them are completing their English. So wherever they are starting in the sequence, whether it is because they are starting lower down in the sequence, or whether it's because even if they pass their one level below developmental class, they're not registering, they're not completing in 1 year, even though they may be able to. No, this is all students, Julie. And it does include part-time students. And I understand that question. It comes up a lot. I think that the early momentum metrics, though, still apply to students that should, a part-time student also should be completing their gateway classes. So if a student is part-time and the reason that they're not completing a gateway class is because they're spending many semesters taking developmental classes because they only take a couple classes at a time, it's still a problem. These students, in the cohort in 2017, some students were in a co-rec model, particularly in English, because we have a pretty good number of our colleges who have adopted and begun to scale co-rec English in the ALP model. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. And here we have, because we're focused on the Reconnect students, I included information about older students. So again, you see, that the younger students, the more traditional age students, typically do better. In fact, the fall off begins dramatically at 20 to 24 years. This may be because of the way that we have structured our sequences. And again, the question about part-time students comes up, but it still is a pretty dramatic difference in, inequitable outcomes for older students and students of color, as we saw on the previous slide. Any other questions about this data? Have I missed anything?
Looks like another one just came in.
Yep. When you say yes, this is the time frame for students who pass within 1 year. These are the early momentum metrics. Okay, I'm thinking the pace of questions has slowed down. So this is really, to me, this is, oh, Jim, in this data, those students who started math, no. The answer is no, they would not be counted as completers if they began taking math in their second year at the college. This is looking at students who started in the first year. So this is what happens in the first year. And so we're kind of trying to focus on the idea that students who complete these courses in their first year are going to be more likely to be successful than students who put off math until their second year. I'll give it one more click for people to digest. If you're interested in more information about the voluntary framework for accountability and student success, we did a fantastic sequence of presentations, a series of presentations on this over the past fall of 2020, where you'll see, this is where I pulled these slides from, but then we did a number of things. If you're curious about who's in the cohorts and how this is put together and other kinds of outcomes that you can see from the VFA, I encourage you to go to our past events website at mcca.org/events and look up those 4, I think there were 4 presentations to look at, and Katie has helpfully put the direct link in there. This is and I have a final data slide here, which really I included in here because, as I mentioned, that we've had a pretty robust adoption of the ALP model by a number of our colleges for English. You can see since the fall 2012 cohort, the increase to 2016 and 2017 in the number of students who are passing college level English in their first year. Less of a dramatic increase in math. We've had less adoption of acceleration in math. Math has been more challenging. Math is more challenging in terms of acceleration nationally, so it's not surprising that it has been here. But you can see that progress is possible, and that these numbers, the increase from 36% to 43% over those 5 years, track pretty strongly to the years in which colleges were scaling up the ALP model. So I find this slide encouraging, and I'd love to see when we look again in a few years, those math numbers moving as well. Last call for questions on the data before we move to just a quick look at backward design. So when you're getting started in a co-rec class, the idea of backward design is one that you want to become familiar with. And it's backward design can be applied to regular course design as well as co-rec course design, but it's particularly important in the co-rec model. And so I just wanted to get us all on a similar footing with this before we head into the breakout rooms where you'll talk more about it in detail. So the concept of backward design is based on a few quick key questions. What are your goals for your students? What do you want them to know? What do you want them to be able to do by the time they finished your class? And you can see there's this book, Understanding by Design, Wiggins and McTighe, is kind of has much more information and in-depth discussion of the backward design theories and models. So the first thing that you want to do when you start to plan your co-rec class is you want to articulate your learning goals as clearly and as succinctly as you can. Particular knowledge, skills, understanding of various aspects of the discipline, etc. You've all planned classes. I am assuming you all know how to identify learning goals and desired outcomes of your class. So when you're setting up a co-rec class, the learning goals of the co-rec class will be the same as the goals of the target gateway class. And that's what makes it different than the traditional prerequisite dev ed. When you're designing a prerequisite class, you're designing that students, you're kind of tracking those goals forward to the gateway class. In the co-requisite model, you start with the goals of the gateway class. When the students finish the co-req class, they'll be finishing the gateway class at the same time. So you want the goals of the co-req class to be the same as the goals of the target gateway course. Defining the evidence of learning. How is the student going to show you that they have learned what you wanted them to learn, the tasks and assignments that will allow them to practice and demonstrate their skills. In the co-requisite class, you can break the larger goals or assignments in the target course into smaller components to help with just in-time learning. So the students are still getting to the same goal, but in the co-req class, they may be working on it in smaller chunks. And then structure the co-req class to help students pursue the goals of the target course. And this is something lots of people want to know, like, and you will talk about this much more in the breakout rooms with your facilitators. I know, like, what do I do? What do I do in the co-req class? I know how to, to teach students the skills in the prereq class that I've been teaching, but what do I do when I have them in the co-req class? How do I stop it from just being a study hall where students just work on their assignments? You can design specific activities to scaffold the learning concepts. This is a great opportunity to build in active learning that you might not have time for in the gateway course, using small groups. Also, making sure that students have an opportunity to get comfortable with the appropriate technology tools, whether it's, specific calculators or, using software programs that you will be using in the gateway course. This is a chance to build in extra practice for that. But you do also want to provide time and space to clarify the expectations of the target course assignments. And I'm not seeing questions, so I think a lot of people don't have questions, but I do have one more Mentimeter. Hang on to see if, okay, so let's, no, I don't want to do that yet. Come back, Mentimeter. Okay. I'm going to go to the next question. And I'm going to remember to share the screen. And I just want to take a few minutes to ask people to share questions that are on the top of mind for you right now. And you can share it here in the Menti, you can share it in the chat, you can unmute and ask whatever works for you. Oh, Nathan, you are asking a question that is very commonly asked. And I think that the facilitators will talk about this in the rooms. I think that anecdotally, what I have heard from people nationally, like Peter Adams with the ALP program and people from the Dana Center, and also people teaching these courses in Michigan, is that it doesn't happen often that the student passes the main course but fails the co-req. But sometimes students, place themselves into or find themselves in a co-req class, and they may not need as much support as they thought they did. And oftentimes they fail because they stop coming. And in that case, if they pass the target course, why would you not just let them pass the target course? Is kind of the answer. If they were able to successfully meet your expectations in the target course and for whatever reason chose not to complete the co-req course, I think that it seems most ethical to just let them pass.
And
Um,
Jenny, just to back you up on that, that is what we're seeing from other states that are scaling COREC, is that the
Mhm.
goal, beginning with the goal in mind, is to pass the main course. And if they pass the main course, they pass the main course. And so that is the sort of standard for most in practice. I don't think I've ever seen anyone decide that the student should not be that not passing the COREC, but passing the main course should result in the students needing to take a course again or do anything further.
I think that's true. And then I see another question, that the sort of the corollary question, which is something that actually colleges you need to spend more time grappling with, which is the students that are able to pass the COREC portion of the class, but aren't able to meet the expectations of the target course. And colleges have come on various solutions about that, whether that means that they can, that they can repeat the course with the COREC support again, or whether they should just repeat the course without the COREC support, or there's another, another solution. But the idea is, again, as Allison said, to get the student to pass the target course. And so you want to give them what you think would be the best opportunity for them to get to pass the target course. All right, we got a lot of questions coming in. Wow. Oh, I see. Staffing here. The scrolling grid is, I see how it's probably staffing with Michigan requirements with HLC conditions for teaching math. Yeah, I agree. That is a conversation and a challenge that I know that many people will be facing. There are ways to structure co-requisite instruction with two different instructors. It requires more coordination and communication between those instructors, but worth doing to do the acceleration. It's just the same thing. You have two instructors, but they have to coordinate together, teaching, so that you have the HLC qualified instructor teaching the college level gateway course, and the other instructor, the developmental qualified instructor, teaching the co-requisite course. People are putting in some experiences. Okay, let's see. I'm going to start. All right. Look at that. I have. Now, how do I make this one go away?
Can you try to click in the margin of the web page?
Yes.
And I see the chat here also on the side. Karen, your point about your experience with the 3 hours versus the 2 hours. For those of you who are research nerds and all of these things, there's some interesting, again, research coming out of Georgia, I think looking at about 20,000 students, drilling down to course schedules and looking at the effectiveness of 1, 2, and 3 credit hours in COREC. And it's interesting, and they're finding in Georgia that 2 hours is about the sweet spot. 1's not enough, and in many cases 3 is too many. But it is interesting that that the work has been around long enough, and the research base is now thick enough that we're starting to see the first studies on that, as well as sort of instructor models as well. Sorry, Jenny, didn't want to derail you, just seeing the chat.
No, that's great. I'm loving these questions, and I'm really sorry that I seem to have done something that makes us not being able to see them very well. All right, what if I do another one?
I was thinking that, or click off onto a different tab and then come back.
Oh, that's a good thought.
I don't know.
Nope, didn't work.
Boo.
Okay. Boo. Here, what if I go back and start again? No, it won't let me do that. Oh, here we go. Okay, now let's present. Oh, that worked.
Yay, Jenny.
Yay, okay, all right. But we're back at the beginning. I'm a little, just look, we have, this is great. We're gonna start our keynote address at about 10 o'clock. And I wanna make sure that Aaron, our keynote presenter, is here and ready. So let's just let this, I'm just going to let these roll for a few moments because there's not, these are great questions. Oh, wow. I just saw one that said, why bother with correct? Why not just eliminate dev ed? That's a really good question. And we could look at our friends in Florida for kind of an answer to that, which is, you can just eliminate dev ed. What they found is that more people take gateway courses and that consequently more people pass gateway courses, but it doesn't have the same powerful impact that moving to the co-rec model has. So you can just, kind of go back to, well, just take the course that you're supposed to take, your gateway course, and then forget about all this extra support stuff. But the co-rec is kind of a really kind of clever and supportive way to get more students to pass the course rather than just eliminating support. You're basically tying the support directly to the course.
And to help more students who can be successful with additional support be successful. So the potential impacts on equity gaps for students who are less confident learners who come with, challenges of various kinds, that there is an equity commitment undergirding an approach to co-rec, particularly for access-oriented institutions or open access institutions, to ensure that every student who's capable of being successful is given their best shot of doing so. I heard somebody was another faculty member in Ohio, so we've got the Ohio contingent here, but it was another faculty member in Ohio recently. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm going to stop here and I'll tell you this anecdote later or put it in the chat. I can tell that I'm freezing up.
I want to call out how students' co-requisites will affect student financial aid. They shouldn't. They typically, a co-rec class is just another course. It's covered by financial aid. It will be covered by the Reconnect. And so it shouldn't have a different impact on financial aid than your traditional structure. Okay, I'm next.
Jenny, can I just add about the financial aid piece? This
Sure,
is Janice.
yes, please. Yeah.
One of the things that it allows students to do is that, depending on how you have it designed, it allows them get to full-time status and count those extra contact hours in their financial aid calculation. So thus reducing the burden to take maybe 2 additional classes. So the student could take the one 6-credit or 7-credit math class, then only requiring, well, maybe 3 additional if they didn't have those extra credits. So it kind of fills their load and it gives them, the credit hours they need for financial aid without having to find extra time on top of other stuff for studying and the extra work that might be required.
Yeah, thanks, Janice. That's very helpful. The other thing that I saw come up that we really haven't touched on, but I think you'll be touching on, we're not actually really working here on math pathways or differentiating math pathways but that is, we do have differentiated pathways in the breakout rooms, and it is a challenge for advising and intake processes to get students to elect the right math pathway early on in their course of study. So preferably when they start, they declare a program of study. And if you've been on our Guided Pathways Institute ride over the past 6 years, and I know that most of your colleges have been, you should already kind of have been aiming in this direction. I know a lot of colleges have instituted math pathways, and they have started talking about helping students to choose a correct pathway, matching pathways to their selected programs of study. We certainly focused on that when we were designing the My Transfer pathways. And so we should have, colleges should be fairly well along in the process of helping students do that. There's always a concern expressed that students may elect to take, for example, a QR pathway and then decide that they want to transfer into a STEM major and that they may not have gotten started with the courses that they need. But the Dana Center did some research on that actually, and they discovered that that happens very, very seldom, and that it's much more likely that students that begin with some STEM pathway math or in STEM pathway programs will want to switch to a program where stats or QR will be more appropriate. So I wanted to highlight that, and I'm going to, at this point, we'll come back and hopefully some of these questions I think will be addressed in your breakout rooms. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to move on to our keynote. Let's go back to this PowerPoint slideshow. Thank you. As a quick reminder, if you have not identified the breakout session you want to attend, you'll be able to move more quickly to your breakout session if you put your number in front of your name. And I see that many have done that, but if you have not, this is another opportunity to do so. Meanwhile, I would like to turn this over to Erin Weiss, the Dean of Mathematics and Science from Lorain County Community College. And I'm gonna, Erin, I'm gonna stop sharing and you can go ahead and share your screen. I'll let you introduce yourself because I know that that's part of your plan in presenting your experience.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to everyone who's put on this this forum today and inviting me to speak. Let me share my screen here. We'll get started. Okay. So I want to start with we're going to take you on a bit of a journey here, right? And it's a journey that I took. It's a journey that our math department has taken over the last, 9 or 10 years. But I think the important thing to note here, math is not a barrier. You hear that all the time from researchers, from people like me in administration, right? That's absolutely not the case. I'm not sure of what other discipline you tell someone that you're a mathematician, which by the way, that's what I am as well. And they look at you sort of with disgust. A lot of people hate math, right? And it gets a negative reputation. It's an easy thing to blame, but math is not the barrier. But something certainly is a barrier for our students, right? And we can look at the history, at least of what we discovered at Lorain County Community College, of what we believe that barrier was, and how we have gotten to where we are now. So yes, I'm Erin Weiss, Dean of Science and Math at Lorain County Community College. That's in Elyria, Ohio. That's about half hour west of Cleveland. And so I'd like to start with a little bit more and pulling back the curtain on our math department here. We have 10 full-time math faculty, lots and lots of adjuncts, 30 adjuncts. That probably sounds somewhat familiar, right? We have 19 courses that we offer. This ranges from, currently we have, starting this fall, we have no Dev Ed. So those are all college level courses with the exception of a few paired co-requisites that are still 0 level, but you cannot take those independently. But 19 courses ranging from very entry level all the way up through differential equations for university partners and that kind of thing. Lots of students take math with us, right? Between 4,500 and 5,000 seats a year. Historically, about 70% of those were in developmental math, right? And I will say, faculty, regardless of whether we were involved with things like completion by design or achieving the dream or the pathway, guided pathways or anything, have been redesigning curriculum since 2012 in an effort to reduce time and cost of completion. And when I say continuously, that's actually true, right? It seems like we've sort of tried everything. And it just like the phrase like everything works, well, it's also sort of like nothing works either. But the goal is reducing time and cost to completion of college level math. Now, the phrase college level math is intentional. A lot of people refer to that as gateway math, right? I have a bit of a problem with the term gateway because I guess it depends on your perspective of a gateway. Is the gate open or is the gate closed? And what I don't want to do is perpetuate the mentality that math is a barrier with a closed gate. So maybe I'll revisit that later, but I think we need to be careful about the language, and I think we need to be careful about the mindset. We want students to have a positive growth mindset towards mathematics and towards college. Then we need to also have that ourselves as administrators and faculty. So let's look at sort of where we were, right? 2012, I think that was supposed to be like the Mayan apocalypse. That didn't happen. Since that didn't happen, we had to redesign these pathways. This might look similar to things that maybe some of your institutions had or have still. I'd like to point out a few things though. Pre-algebra, 3 credit hours. You could go either to a 4 credit hour beginning algebra and then go to intermediate level, right? Then get to college level, right? Or you could go 3 credit hours to a part 1 of beginning algebra and part 2 of beginning algebra, both of which were 4 credits, and then to intermediate algebra, which is 3 more credits. So at one point, a student could have, and the majority did, they could have taken 14 credits prior to getting to a college level math course. Now, remember the goal. The goal is to reduce time and cost to completion. Not only is that a lot of time, right? Many, many semesters worth. Generally speaking, for most students, that's 2 years, 1 semester, 2 semester, 3 semester, 4 semesters, 2 years just to get to gateway math. It's also expensive because all of those had different textbooks, okay? So lots of costs, also not to mention the credit hours that they pay for, right? Unproductive credit hours that they pay for. So without knowing much of anything else, the math department decided, yeah, this is not good. We need to reduce the time and cost of completion. We're not really even going to take that much of a look at the data. We just don't like this structure. We need to try something else. Okay. So we decided there's a couple things that were on the plate, right? One of them was the Emporium model. And I think that was the big thing back then. And maybe it is still a big thing, but you don't really hear about it. But Emporium model was a big thing. We were adamantly against the Emporium model. And so we glommed onto this idea of sort of 8-week modules, right? Which I think it was presented earlier as compression or modularization or something. And so that's what we did. We went mod. And yeah, so, you know, we had like the same level of stuff, right? A pre-algebra, beginning algebra 1 and 2, intermediate algebra 1 and 2. It's a little cleaner, right? It's a little nicer. These were all 2 credit hours, okay? The majority of our students would start here in beginning algebra 1, but someone would still, if these are all 2 credit hours, it was still 10 credit hours to get through developmental math, to get to a gateway math, right? And maybe a little less if you went off on these, the technical math pathway or to math for elementary teachers. Again, those are not where the majority of students go, right? At this point, the majority of students had to go all the way through this sequence to get to a gateway math class, okay? So 10 credit hours, yeah, it's better than 14. Time, well, time is probably a little bit better here as well, simply because these are 2 credit hour modules that were taught as 8-week courses. And so a student could get through, could place into any of these levels, which is better, right? So maybe you were ready to place into beginning algebra part 2 and you didn't need part 1. And so maybe then you only need 6 credits to get to. So that's a plus, right? Additionally, we thought, well, we get so many students who fail our courses that if they fail, they could retake the class during the second 8-week term. Again, good intentions, okay? I just want to point out the percentages. The percentages here are the C or better success rates for these courses individually, right? So again, not awful, particularly like the intermediate algebra, right? Intermediate algebra part 2, almost an 80% success rate is pretty good, but it still wasn't good enough. We also started thinking about, at this time, we started getting into the guided pathways movement, okay? And so that was maybe 2015, which it sounds like it was about the same for Michigan. And so we took a little bit of time and redesigned again the pathways. And what we did is we created a dev ed pathway that led to sort of the non-calculus based mathematics. Okay, so we split things as the non-calculus track and the calculus track. This Math 041 is still the same 2 credit hour course. Notice in the calculus track, we still have all those modules, the 051 through the 081, so the 8-week modules were still there. So to get to college algebra, it was still a fairly daunting task, right? But we did reduce certainly the number of credit hours for the non-calculus path, okay? At the same time, we aligned all of these college level math courses to the appropriate majors on campus. And that took a lot of work from the faculty. That was a lot of meetings with program coordinators across campus to make sure that their programs had the right math class aligned. And we have a lot of options there in the non-calculus track. Okay, we even included Introduction to Logic, which is approved by the Ohio Transfer Module as a math course. Okay, so this Foundations of Quantitative Reasoning, though, was a class developed specifically because we also developed this quantitative reasoning college level math class. Now, it sort of just became the default prerequisite, right? Because we weren't ready at this time to sort of say we don't need a prerequisite. We weren't ready to think about co-requisites. I'm not sure if we'd even been sort of told about them at this point. I mean, it was about 2015. But this is better, right? So 2 credit hours here, 3 credit hours here. That's only 5 credit hours. It still is basically 2 semesters, though. This could be 8 weeks. We did offer this in 8 weeks. So really this could be 1 semester, and then you could get to college level in your spring semester of your first year. This is still not good, right? This is still a long time in the calculus track, okay? Another thing happened at this point. What happened was we shifted enrollment. The enrollment shifted from more of these algebra-based courses, college algebra. We had a college math, which got eliminated. College math, which is basically an algebra course that was not college algebra. The enrollment shifted drastically to the non-calculus pathway simply because of guided pathways, okay? But we did realize, yeah, this looks decent, but this calculus track is still problematic. So let's do some data analysis on the calculus track. However, we had information that was given to us from institutional research, and so essentially it's what was talked about in the presentation earlier this morning, which is first-year students who pass college level math and English had a significantly higher likelihood of graduation over time. And so that was backed up, not only the national research, but that was backed up by our own institutional research department. On top of that, our board of trustees adopted what we call at LCCC the What Matters Most metrics. And those are sort of indicators of effectiveness that the board of trustees use. The key metric for us as a math department and for the Division of Science and Math was they were going to track the number of students who complete college level math in the first year. Okay, so what that meant for us is we need a specific department goal, right? And so we decided something that would have a nice trickle down effect would be to increase the number of students who complete college level math in 1 year, okay? Because if they complete it in 1 year, by default, those who are first year should have completed in 1 year, right? And so that was the impetus for sort of this new goal. Certainly reducing cost is still important. And by default, if you're trying to get students to complete Gateway Math in 1 year, you're reducing time to completion of college level math. We were still very skeptical, though, of co-requisites at this time, right? And perfectly acceptable, right? It's acceptable to be skeptical, by the way, that's fine. So, you know, we did need to look at some of the data. It took students a long time to get through that calculus pathway. So that's where we started. we kind of liked the concept of the foundations of quantitative reasoning because it was only one semester to get to a college level. We knew the calculus pathway was still problematic. Remember, those were those 8-week compressed modules, whatever you want to call it. I don't know about you, but if you look at the statistics here, this is not good. If you start at the lowest level, 4% of those students essentially got a C or better in college algebra in 1 year, which is not surprising because it would take you 5 8-week semesters to get through, and so it's even miraculous that anyone got that, right? But we did have doubled up modules, and people were able to test out and switch. So, but the success rates are very poor. And remember, even for the one at the bottom here, Math 081, which was the 8-week prerequisite to college algebra, in which there was like an 80% success rate for the course. That course itself had an 80% success rate. So it would stand to reason that you would think that those students will be very successful in college algebra within a year. No, they weren't, 30% of them. And you'll notice there's not very good data here, right? And I believe this is a consequence of a few things, not necessarily that the courses were poorly designed or anything. The content of the courses were solid, of course. It's just very difficult to progress through developmental math with many, many stopout points. Students do not enroll. If you give them an option of not enrolling, they don't. And if your goal is to get more students into college level math, then they have to be in college level math, right? And you cannot have many, many, many stopout points for them. Okay, so we decided this is not good. We need to come up with something else for college algebra. But of course, we were still against co-requisites. And so yours truly designed this 1 semester Foundations of Algebra course as a prerequisite to college algebra. This sort of matched up our calculus track and our non-calculus track with really nicely. The diagram looks fairly similar, but now it's only 1 course as a prerequisite. And essentially what I tried to do when I developed this course was make it the specific content that we knew students struggled in college algebra with. And, you know, it was a great concept, had a lot of active learning, had a lot of sort of concepts of group work and co-requisite strategy, but it wasn't a co-requisite itself. It was still a prerequisite, okay? And so we decided that, okay, we like this structure. We've been also running this non-calculus stuff for a few years now. We need to look at how we're doing there, okay? So non-calculus pathway, the lowest level course, again, 041, 70% C or better rate, which that, again, for a dev ed class is very, very good. What is not good is, again, how students progressed. Students just did not progress to Math 158 or Math 168, which are quantitative reasoning or statistics. They just progressed at a very low rate if they start at that lowest level in 1 year. Quantitative reasoning and stats, like I said earlier, are our largest enrollment math classes on campus. That's where most of our students take for the programs that we have. So it's our biggest population. This is a very, very important result. The other thing that may be equally important was this course that we designed that we thought this is a great prerequisite. This is going to work really well for non-calculus. Yeah, and it still had a 68% C or better rate, which is very good again. But only 30%. This is 1 semester, a 1 semester prerequisite. 36% of the students who started in that class succeeded in quantitative reasoning in 1 year, and 29% of those succeeded in stats in 1 year. That's still not good, right? That's still very low. And again, there is a drastic disconnect, I hope you can see, from all of the individual success rates of the courses and the rates of progression. So even with our best intention of minimizing the time to get to college level math, of only having a 1 semester prerequisite, the results of students passing gateway math was still very poor, okay? So somewhere in here, like maybe this is fall 2016, December 2018, after 1 year of this, we were sort of like, yeah, okay, maybe we should pilot a co-rec. So we had a few faculty who decided, yes, we need to do this, and the rest of us were still skeptical. But we said, sure, go ahead and pilot it. It's not going to work, but go ahead and do it. So we did. And we had a fall 2017 to summer 2018 quantitative reasoning pilot. We essentially adapted the Math 058 class into a co-requisite for Math 158. So the foundations of quantitative reasoning to the quantitative reasoning. The co-requisite was 2 credit hours. It was held an hour before the college level course, all taught by the same instructor. However, it was very, very small, a very, very small sample size here, simply because it was a pilot. And okay, so we did get some decent results. 62% of the students earned a C or better in 1 year when they took the paired course. In fact, that was really in 1 semester that they earned a C or better, right? During this pilot, we didn't have a single student repeat any of the co-rec and the quantitative reasoning course. And so instead of doing this in a year, they really did it in a semester. 71%'s got a D or better. Yeah, we like to use C or better as our metric for success. But we also look at Ds because you can get a diploma with a D in your college level math class, right? That is absolutely true. And it is technically a success. It is a success according to the state of Ohio with our performance-based funding, et cetera. So we do look at both, but we try to stick with, we prefer the C or better rate, particularly for the calculus pathway, because you need C or better to move on into courses higher up. Promising results, yeah, but is a small pilot, right? There was, maybe 40-ish students total in this pilot. Still skeptical about this working on a large scale. And rightfully so. This is a very small pilot. And the reason we had such a hard time getting enrollment in the pilot is because we still had an option of the foundations of quantitative reasoning, Math 058. It was still there. And so I'm not sure what we expected, right? So we decided, well, the rates of progression for the co-rec is really good within a year. And again, that's our metric, right? That's the board's metric that we're looking at. And if we think back, the standard model, only 36% of those students complete quantitative reasoning in a year, and 29% of those students complete stats in a year with a dev ed prerequisite. Maybe we should consider just going all in on co-requisites for these classes, because it would actually be hard to do worse than those success rates. And so that was sort of the challenge. At this time, I went to the dark side and became an administrator, right? And that was sort of the challenge that I presented to the math department was, okay, I understand we're skeptical, I am too, but what we're doing is bad. I have a hard time believing that if we put students in with the supports into the classes, that it will be worse than our current rates. And so that's exactly what we did. The challenge was, it wasn't really a challenge, but that's sort of just a nice title here. But the faculty responded very, very positively to that. And I think part of it was they wanted to prove me wrong, right? And that's fine. I've always said that if we're going to do these things, we're going to do this, and we're not going to be satisfied until we find something that works for our students. And if it comes to something is no longer working, we are going to adapt, make changes. So what we did is the math department went all in and decided that fall of 2019 we were going to have co-requisites for quantitative reasoning and stats. All of the standalone developmental math was going to be eliminated except for that Foundations of Algebra course, which of course was near and dear to my heart because I wrote it. But everything else is going to be eliminated. Notice this was fall to fall. So this was an entire year. We took an entire year, and I provided significant reassigned time, offsetting faculty load for the co-requisite course development and alignment to the college level courses. That's a really, really, really important thing. And if you don't necessarily have that much time or necessarily can offset load, it's probably going to take you more time to develop. But I would implore any administrators on this here today that is a very, very important thing to provide faculty with, because it does take a significant amount of time to develop materials and align materials appropriately. Okay. And when I say align materials, the thing that we wanted to do is, again, thinking about cost. We didn't want co-requisites to cost students more money besides the tuition. So part of the challenge, and the thing that the faculty were very, very adamant about, was developing OER materials for the co-requisites. So essentially the faculty were provided this reassigned time to develop content specific to supporting the college level math course that was available for free to the students. And that was developing a workbook, developing sort of guided notes through the class, projects in class, worksheets, that kind of thing. But that was free. And so that took a significant amount of time. But what it also did is it allowed us to have full control over what is taught in the co-requisite, instead of relying on what a publisher says you're supposed to do. I'm not concerned about teaching students a bunch of intermediate algebra when they need to learn things in quantitative reasoning. I'm not concerned with doing the same thing for statistics, okay? But we will teach them the specific thing in the co-rec the hour prior to, maybe if they're learning about linear regression, maybe they do need to remember y equals mx plus b, that kind of thing, okay? But it's specific to the co-rec or to the college level content. At the same time, we developed a multiple measures placement strategy. And then additionally, because we were eliminating all developmental, standalone developmental math, we needed still an option for very low level placing students, which would have been the old beginning pre-algebra 041 level. So what we did is we used the ALEX placement assessment. There's ALEX PPL. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that. But essentially we offered that as a free resource to students. We provided them with math coaches. Someone who was still not at a level to place into a course was given all of this additional support for free. And again, based on the numbers that we had, if you start at that low level, you have a very low likelihood of getting through a college level course. So we might as well, we still can provide them with something, and we made it free simply because we didn't want to use up their financial aid. We didn't want them to spin their wheels because we knew they did. And simply, it's the right thing to do. Okay, so here's what it looks like now. Well, fall of 2019, maybe that's still what it looks like. Non-calculus, you'll notice the Math Foundations Lab using ALEX is essentially what you would do first if you did not have a placement, if you're not placed using our multiple measures mechanism into a credit course. Okay. And the numbers in parentheses here are all the credit hours. So we do have a total of 5 credit hours for those co-requisites, okay? The 057, 158, the 068, 168. And that's really 2 credit hours for the Dev Ed portion and 3 for the college level, okay? So that was a really nice, it looks like a fairly nice setup. We hedged our bets. We went all in, and we waited with bated breath to see how we did. Fall 2019. So a funny thing happened in spring 2020. It's the thing that we should not name, but it did not have an effect necessarily on our co-requisite. So here's the results of our first year, okay? So 60% of the students had a D or better in the quantitative reasoning co-rec, 55% had a C or better, 56% had D or better in the stats co-rec, 45% C or better in the stats co-rec. Yeah, so that's already better. So it's better than what we had done historically. You had actually more students in college level math who supposedly were less prepared. And the success rates of the courses either stayed the same, right? For 158 stayed the same at 57%. For 168, it actually increased a little bit. So again, with supposedly less prepared students, putting them in a co-requisite with appropriate supports that directly support the college level class, students did as well, if not better. And certainly they progressed at a much, much faster rate. So all around, really nice results. We wanted to go a little bit further into this though. So the interesting thing that we found was 73% of the stats co-rec students who passed the co-rec also passed the college level class with a C or better. That's actually significantly higher than those who were placed directly into the college level class and got a C or higher, which was 60%. The same result holds true for quantitative reasoning. In fact, even better, almost 80% of those co-rec students outperformed those who were placed directly in to the college level course. Maybe I briefly mentioned it before, but the co-requisite is essentially an effort-based grade. Attendance, notebook checks, worksheets, that's about 65% of the score. The other 35% are assessments, quizzes, little assessments that make up the rest that are very similar to the worksheets and the content that's just built from all the other things that from the attendance, well, from the notebook checks and the worksheets. We've concluded that that's actually really interesting, that essentially being able to show up and complete assignments is a better prediction of your success in a college level course than placement. Because the placement test resulted in significantly lower C or better rates than the direct supports for the course for co-requisites. And I think that was maybe mentioned earlier, but that's a really, really nice result that was completely unexpected. And the thing is, most of this stuff is totally counterintuitive. You think that you're just going to throw a bunch of people in and they're all going to fail miserably, and this doesn't make any sense. And actually, what I've discovered is the less that it seems to make sense, maybe that's a better way of handling things. And maybe it's actually, maybe that's the more counterintuitive it is, the better result you might get. And I think that's based on a lot of preconceived notions that we've developed over time that we have to slow things down for students. We know what's best for them. They can't do this. In fact, what we did is we hedged our bets with them that they could, if we put them in a class with support, do the work and be successful. And clearly our data shows that that is true for these particular courses. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, what about this college algebra business? And yeah, we started thinking that too. We got really nice results for quantitative reasoning and stats, which, by the way, again, that's where most of our enrollment is, okay, based on pathways. But we certainly still had an issue with college algebra. And so, you know, the faculty said, well, why don't we just design a similar type of strategy for college algebra, developing
that letter, the first letter that they get is pretty chock-full.
And making that support specific to the college algebra course. And I said, yes, that sounds wonderful. Please have at it. And so one more time, maybe just one more time, I don't know. But if you notice, what did we have? We don't have the 095. And this is sort of really a key result, a key goal that we've had. We've certainly wanted to reduce time and cost to completion. We needed to do things within a year. I'm not sure how much else we can reduce dev ed with no more dev ed, right? There is no more standalone dev ed starting this fall at Lorain County Community College. Remember, the Alex Math Foundations Lab is not a course. Students don't pay, there's no credit involved, that is directly support. Anyone can enroll in that at any time and get the support they need to brush up their skills. But there is no more dev ed credits. You cannot take the 0 level 057, 068 on its own. And so I think we have truly taken a journey from sort of skeptic to seeing some evidence that has produced really, really strong results for us. And we've sort of hedged our bets on students' abilities as long as you provide them with direct support. And that's the key. Throwing them in, you can do that, of course you can. But I think the support is what's important. And why is it important? Students coming out of high school, particularly, are those who have been out of school for a long time. They don't necessarily, high school's not necessarily training them on how to college, certainly on how to approach a college level math class. So why not give all of them the support they need to be successful in that college level math class? And frankly, that's what we're doing with college algebra. Notice how college algebra does not have a 0 paired with it. What we have actually planned for this fall is that all students placing into college algebra will be in the co-requisite. The college algebra success rate in and of itself is bad enough that we might as well just try that anyway. So give the supports to everyone. Okay, and so that's going to be interesting. We've essentially added on a recitation for that class. So really interested to see how that goes in comparison to the 2 credit hour pair. I do like that better if, as an administrator, this is probably bad for an administrator. I like it better though, because it's less expensive to the student, right? It's less credit hours. It's logistically easier to register for, right? Because trust me, having the paired courses is a nightmare sort of for the staff to set up in our system and all that. So anyway, so back to what matters most, first year college level success. You can see where sort of the levee broke here, right? This is our first year cohort that has been tracked through by the Board of Trustees since, and they went back, they backdated it to 2011. First year math success. Here's the line that shows of all of those students who attempted math, how many actually completed gateway math. And these were hovering between the overall cohort, because again, not everyone in that first year cohort, for whatever reason, actually ends up taking math, okay? But what you can see here is that there is a tremendous increase in which the only thing that we did was we added co-requisites for stats and quantitative reasoning. So what we did is we made sure that more students were in gateway math. You can't pass gateway, gateway. You know, I did say gateway, and maybe gateway is fine, right? As long as you keep the gate open, and you keep it open with making sure students are in college level math courses with supports. Certainly we still have work to do here. There's still some achievement gaps that we need to close, but we've still made good progress across the board. Particularly, I mean, all these lines are trending upward. It's very, very good. The last piece I just want you to notice is, yes, more students started in college level math. They can't pass college level math if they're not in college level math. Any questions? I think I'm over time, I'm sorry, so.
No worries at all, Aaron. Thank you so much. I'm gonna, we're gonna go to the next thing we're gonna do is go to breakout rooms, and then we're gonna, basically be there until lunch, and we're gonna keep the rooms open during lunch, and so people can continue to sort of pop in and out to ask questions while they're grabbing their lunch and eating. It's really meant to be a true working session. So if people do have questions for Aaron, please let's take a moment and address them while we have him here. Aaron, I answered a question from Phoebe in the chat that hopefully I was correct, that your 4 hours of college algebra beginning this fall reflects the co-rec hour, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We have additional contact. We have additional contact hours for them with a recitation built in, but the students pay for 4 credit hours.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, I was wrong, Phoebe, that there are extra hours, but the credit hours are the same.
I am seeing some more questions in the chat here. There's a question. There's an HLC question. Let's see. Do you maintain staffing with the same instructor in co-requisite class? If so, how are you able to staff and maintain HLC requirements for master's degrees? Most of our adjuncts do not have the required math background at the grade level.
Yeah, and that's actually true. We had quite a few traditional DevEd math instructors who are not master's prepared in math, and we had to hire quite a few new faculty to deliver the co-requisite courses. The same individual teaches both. We were adamant about that. The faculty were adamant about that. And philosophically, I'm not sure why you would want someone else to be the person directly supporting your students when you actually know where the students' skills are lacking. That's a very hard thing to communicate between people. So yeah, we had we had to hire new faculty. Unfortunately, I made the decision that we were, with eliminating Dev Ed, some of the faculty weren't going to be able to come back. However, that's why we also developed the Alex Math Foundations Lab. I provided an opportunity for those students to still work with students as a math coach. I still paid them at the same credit hour rates that we would pay adjuncts. I didn't pay them at an hourly rate, because certainly recognizing that we're eliminating work for people in some cases. So, but yeah, so that's how we maintain the requirements. Staffing can be an issue. How you have things coded, depending on what your system is. We use PeopleSoft. The paired course model is a pain in the rear end with student registrations and things. And there's just, yeah. So I'm really interested to see how the recitation model works. But yeah, anyway, I see one. Can students use financial aid to pay for Alex? Yeah, I didn't mention we pay for Alex for them. They don't have to pay for it. So it's a 20, I think state of Ohio is maybe, I don't remember if it's $15 per test now, or if it's still it's still at 20. The college absorbs that cost. I built that into the budget of science and math to absorb that cost for the students. Again, we're trying to do the right thing for the student, and we don't want it to cost them more. They already pay enough in tuition and for books and everything else. If we're trying to get them to college level math, we don't want that to cost them more. Yeah, someone mentioned release time, it looks like. What did release time look like? So the faculty load here is 15 ILUs, right? Instructional load units. And a lot of our faculty do overload on top of that. I think I gave about half a load reassigned to those main faculty who were developing. Again, these were from scratch developed OER materials for the co-requisites, and so that's probably, if that's not the route you're going, it might not be that much reassigned time. But I do firmly believe in appropriately paying faculty for the work, and because and giving them the time to do it. And certainly I understand that the sooner you do these kind of things, the better, because again, we shouldn't just be satisfied with perpetuating a model that does not work for students, right? I mean, it might have worked for a few students, but that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get as many students successfully completing college level math as possible. So I don't know how many more questions I should answer, Allison or Jenny.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move to the breakout rooms. And if there are more things that people want to reach out to you for, Aaron did put his email in the chat, and also the contact information for all of the facilitators is available on your Canvas website. So we will continue kind of communication with Aaron. We really appreciate this presentation. It was just perfect. I think we got, it's great to see another institution that's not, that faces the same issues that we have, who has conquered this. So thank you very much. And we'll do a little applause.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here, and I did put, email and phone number were in the chat, and certainly on the PowerPoint. I am open to anyone contacting me with any questions at any time whatsoever. Happy to always help and just talk things out with people. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms. I think I got most of you assigned. Some of you won't be assigned. Either you didn't have a number or I somehow didn't see it, and so I may have to move some people manually. Bear with me. And when you get into your rooms, you'll have your facilitators there. They'll introduce themselves and they'll lead the conversation. Please let people take breaks as needed. I didn't build a break into this first session. So, if people want more coffee or a bio break, you might want to let that happen. So basically, I won't close the rooms until I'm bringing everyone back for our group discussion at 1:30. But you all are in charge of, making sure that people get breaks and get their lunch and things like that. So thank you all very much. And I am opening the rooms now. Let's see what happens. Okay. Most of the people who are left did not identify a breakout room. Anybody want to tell me where they want to go?
I already put Katie into room 2.
Cool.
I wanted to go to statistics, but I didn't know which room number it was.
Oh, it's 3. Is that Sharon?
That's Perez, Laura
Perez, Laura Perez. Gotcha. Okay. I will send you there. Britt, did you want to go to QR? I'm going to send her, I think she's QR. I presume the other people who are here on the screen are not here.
Hey, Jenny, do you want to pause the recording?
Yeah, I do want to pause. I'm going to stop the recording as a matter of fact.